Hi, I'm Romi.
And I'm Nicole.
We are two businesswomen, two colleagues, two friends who had an idea and decided to do something with it. Over the past 2 years, we've built the Daily Drip, a media platform and community for the modern South Florida businesswoman.
From Palm Beach to South Beach, we've built an audience of thousands of local business owners, CEOs, founders, executives, and more. And we did it 100% organically.
Whether it's through our blog, weekly newsletter, social media, events, or even this podcast, our mission is to offer a daily drop of inspiration as you pursue your dreams.
People ask us all the time how we did it and why we did it. Join us as we bring you along our journey and the journeys of so many other incredible local businesswomen here on Her Pursuit.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Her Pursuit podcast. I'm Romi Wallach, co-founder of the Daily Drip, and I'm really excited, actually. If anyone knows me, they know that motherhood is probably the thing I like to talk about the most. So I'm excited. I'm joined today by Klein from Flourish Law Group, Kelly Toliday from R&R, and Nicole Cumberbatch, the Motherhood Village. And this particular group is kind of interesting to me because I'm actually on the other side now. As a mom of adult children, it's going to be kind of cool to have this conversation. And I want to kick it off with this question. So in what ways have your priorities and values evolved since becoming a mother, and how has this influenced your decisions and goals? And I saw this question and it kind of triggered something in me that I wanted to kick the conversation off with, because I think that the way we're raised, for better or worse, kind of helps shape or kind of put us on the path of how we want to parent, or the kind of, what that's going to look like. And so I grew up with entrepreneurial parents who were business partners. My mom was a total badass, did it all. She worked full time, all the things, but she did it so perfectly well in my mind, because everything that mattered, she was there for. Everything, like, she didn't miss anything, and I felt her presence all the time. So to me, I really admired that, and I thought, I'm going to have my kids, I'm going to be pregnant, have my babies, and go back to work in a matter of days. At 22, I lost my dad tragically. And that really changed everything, because now my mindset was, what if I only have 22 years? What if that's all I have to raise my kids? And I was surprised to find that I didn't want to run back to work. I really wanted to soak up all of it. I wanted to be home. I didn't have support or help. And we moved to Florida, I had no nanny, no nothing, no family. But I loved all of it. Like, even the hard parts, I'm not going to say it's all, let's be real. It's not all rainbows and unicorns. But for me, I was operating from a place of like, I just want to make the most of every minute I have with them. That was something that surprised me about my motherhood journey. And it really shaped the course of what I did professionally. So, I'm gonna look at you. You get started, Lauren, because you were working in I'm curious about your journey, having worked corporate, and how having kids sort of may have shifted what your trajectory was going to look like.
Yeah, so when I got pregnant with my first son, it was January 2020. So it was a very crazy time. At first, I was like, how did I get pregnant at the worst possible time ever in the history of humankind? It actually worked out because I was able to be home for both of my pregnancies. But I definitely will say my priorities shifted in many ways because for a few reasons. One, I decided I was finally going to allow myself to take care of myself, because I was able to also know I was taking care of a child who was inside of me. So for the first time, I was like, I'm going to take a break from work and go get a massage, or I'm going to go do these things for me, because in my mind, I was like, I'm doing it for the baby.
Well, your motherhood instincts were already kicking in.
But I wasn't doing those things for myself before. So it was weird. Like, it was almost like I was allowed to now have my own self-care time, which I had never really, I was like, go for so many years before that point. But for me, being in a big law firm, surrounded by mostly men, if not all men that I was working with, who all had stay-at-home wives, who did the laundry and cooked all the food and did all the things, so they were able to be in the office all day, every day, focusing on work. And that's a great setup, but I knew that was not going to be my life. Andrew was going to keep working. I wanted to keep working. And so it was so hard. I didn't see anyone who looked like me and who was doing it the way I wanted to do it. So my priority was, how can I continue to be a lawyer, practice law, because I knew I wanted to stay in my career, but do it in a way that works for me. And I'm still figuring that out. Oh, yeah. But just knowing like, hey, that is something I can do, and I can decide what kind of mom I want to be. That was really, really big for me personally.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, Nicole isn't here today to speak to this, but I know like we've talked a lot about this, and for her becoming a single mom really was like the only option for her was entrepreneurship. In her mind, the only way she was going to be able to be the kind of mom that she wanted to be and be present for Sebastian meant the journey was going to be entrepreneurial, because working in a corporate setting does not really allow for those kinds of hours, and especially for someone who's single.
Well, I can relate to that because, I mean, I was in this job working so many hours a day, but I was completely trading my time for money. I knew I had a certain amount of hours, 2,000 hours I had to bill a year. That's a finite thing. There was no way I could really work around that. And I was like, I just don't think I fit here. So I got pregnant, took my leave 4 months, got pregnant again a year later, took another 4 months. And I was in there with two young babies thinking, this is not going to work. Like, I don't have 2,000 hours to bill to make this law firm all this money. I don't have it anymore. So entrepreneurship was a no-brainer for me because I'm like, I can build my own thing and I can use the power of a team and leverage and again, still learning all of that too.
I think it's like the wanting too. Like these little humans come out of you and it's overwhelming that like you want to be a part of it. It's not even anymore like what was acceptable to trade your time for when it comes to your kids. It's an entirely different kind of sacrifice that has to be worth it.
There's a term called matrescence that basically identifies all of this, which is literally, and I had a guest on the podcast that likened it to adolescence, but matrescence, and technically I think it can go for mothers and fathers, where your identity shifts in motherhood. But I know that there is something with fathers too, but it's basically an identity shift. It's a transformative, physical, emotional, all the things. And they actually have a coin term for it. And the reason why they liken it to adolescence is because when you think of adolescence, it's actually a stage that you go through. And it's the same thing with motherhood or parenthood. The difference being with matrescence, you kind of have it all through life, because to your point, you now have older kids. I have a 6-year-old, you have 3 and 2. You have a couple
3 and 1.
3 and 1. But I'm thinking of ages of like it continues. So now you're in this stage, right? Now I have, you and I think I've talked about this, Nicole and I have, of an elementary school student. And that's like a whole nother thing. Like every season is like another identity shift of who and what you need to be for your child. I also came from the corporate space. And what I'll just say to that is, my thing with the identity shift was, oh, wait, I had worked so hard for my career that I knew I wanted to be a CFO of a company. I had worked my way up to VP of finance, close enough. And when my son came, I was like, same thing. I don't want to do this, but not necessarily because I couldn't. I just didn't care to anymore. And I still wanted to be relevant and have relevant in the sense of having something to sustain. And I loved the grind of putting effort in to achieve something. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily the way. And then, working in corporate, you realize so many companies don't really have the infrastructure to support working mothers. And yes, dads can be included in that because we know fathers are much more hands-on than they used to be, but the system is not meant for working mothers, not in the way that I think that we're trying to. And to your point of like really being in it and saying, okay, wait, I want to be home for dinner, but I also want to have a career and have that be part of my identity. How do we do both?
It's a hard space to be in because you really do have to let go of a part of who you were to step into this new role. And the reality is you have this baby, and then for the rest of your life, that's the one title you will always have is I'm Jonah and Abby's mom. Like that is, you introduce yourself like that in the early years. I mean, people don't even know what your name is, but they certainly know whose mom you are. And I think that for a lot of professional women especially, and I watched my sister really go through this. So I didn't go to graduate school. My father passed actually weeks before I was supposed to start, and I just ended up in the family business. So I wasn't tied to my career per se, but I did watch my sister struggle with the fact that after 4 years of law school, working in a big law firm, it was hard. It was a hard thing to figure out how to let go of some of that because there was a lot that went into that, and it was very much a part of who she was, but she had 4 kids. And like corporate is certainly, big law is not designed for that. So I think it's a different kind of struggle too, when you've invested that much of your time and energy and that becomes part of your persona.
Of course. I mean, from when we're young, it's like, you want to go to, well, actually, I think it's shifted, right? It's, start a family, have kids. And now our generation is like, go to college, get that degree and figure out what that. So yeah, that became such a big part of my identity. So I'm like, how do I bridge the two together?
Yeah, I definitely can relate to the story with your sister and similar to you guys as well. But in the sense that I've always been an entrepreneur. I've worked in global marketing agencies, but there was 10 different accounts that I would work for. Or then when I moved back here from Australia, I was working technically as a 1099 freelancer for a marketing agency at the same time running my yoga business, starting the retreats, doing the coaching. I had like 5 or 6 different hands in different buckets at any given time. And then I had my daughter and my first daughter, and the same with you, Lauren. I had her in September 2020. And it was just one of those things where it got to October 2021, landed myself in the hospital from burnout, from just trying to run too many different things, run the household. And while my husband is so hands-on, like he'll clean anything up, he'll change the diaper, he'll cook the dinner, it's still, there's a lot of the burden that relies on you. And I want to be that. I want to be that person. I'm not trying to run into this martyrdom or be the martyr in the family where I could just do it all. I want to be the head of the household. And so I was also training for a triathlon. Like there was a lot going on. I remember sitting in this hospital bed, like they're like, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, but there is. And I got an email from a real estate agent, a commercial real estate agent. I also wanted to open up a yoga studio at that same time. And she was like, you know what? This space, there's someone that just put an offer on the table for this space. Like you have to answer now, like while I was in the hospital. And I was like, I can't do it all. And I come back to this all the time. Like we're told that we can have it all. And we're not really understanding, I think, as moms, like, do we even want it all? Or do we want it all right now? Like we can have it all, but we might not be able to have it all right at the same exact time. Like choosing the things that are important to us at different seasons of life. And that doesn't mean that you can't still have something on, have something on the side, or maybe just take a little bit of a step back from your business and let your business partner handle it, or let your community just kind of know you're there, but you're taking a little bit of a step back so that you can be there for those early years, or whatever that looks like for you. I think that was my big turning point of, okay, there's only so many things that can be like my all right now, and some of these things are going to have to fall off the back burner for a little bit, and that was okay. And so it's been a couple years journey of being like, all right, how do I like hand off some things or delegate some things, or just decide like this actually isn't in my trajectory right now.
I think that's so poignant because I think a lot of times moms and women struggle, and the mommy burnout is so real because of that, because it just is what it is. Like I said, I think we're in a generation where husbands are doing much more than previous generations, but the mommy burnout, like mom, whether it's because we want to do it or, we feel like we have to, whatever that mindset shift is. But I think it's poignant to say that, to take a step back and say, for me and for my family and I, what works best. And then saying from there, what are the values we want to hold? What is that? And then building out from there. But to your point, it still goes back to the children are kind of that core center. And I do believe you can still go after your career. But then to your point, how do you outsource? How do you find ways? Because you don't have to be the one to maybe cook all the time, or maybe you can cook if cooking is something you want and you want to make your family meals. Maybe it's meal prepping on Sunday, so where you're not cooking Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Like there has to be some give and take because we can't do it all at the same time. But I do think you can have the career and have certain things. It just may look differently than the thought that you had for what it should be.
Something I wrestled with early on in terms of identity was that because I really think my mom might be the best human ever. Like that's how much I think she's awesome. And she set such an example that I was very conflicted by the path that I was kind of going down, in that there was a part of me that beat myself up, that like I don't know if I felt I couldn't do both, but I didn't want to at that time. And that was something like it was hard to walk away from that. It was kind of hard to let it go. It was almost like, what does that say about me that I'm not going to do all of these things right now, And I was working, but I wanted to be doing all the stuff. Like I wanted to do all of it. And it was a really hard time for me to kind of navigate that. It was surprising and overwhelming. And it was also really hard for me to feel confident. And I think part of that comes from a shift in our society where we've gone from this place where it was like women can have it all and do it all to we should. Like there was almost not like people were attaching a stigma to like stay at home motherhood. And so to me, it came down to like, it's about your choices. If you choose to stay home or you choose to go to work, that's really what we should be celebrating. I felt like I was living in a time where there was almost shame cast upon someone that made the choice to want to be home with their kids, at least for a period of time or whatever that looked like. And to me, that was a big disservice to women in general, because what we should be advocating for is doing what feels good for you and what's best for your family, whatever that looks like. Listen, I've met moms who like they are better moms because they ain't home all day. Like they are a better mom for that. And there's others that maybe their kids need something more. I mean, I went through a period where my daughter, God bless her, the one who definitely made me the better mom, where if I had not been on top of things and present the way I was, there's just no way she would have become who she is today. Like it required a lot more hands-on, you know. Maybe if it had just been Jonah, it would have looked a little different. But I think that that's also something we all have to really consider. And there wasn't a good sense of community, which I said to you from like when we first met. I'm like, I had no village. I was very alone. At the time, having a kid at 25 is young. You know, I didn't have my friends were still living at home with their parents, you know, and like we'd put our son down and have a rager in the house kind of thing. Like was not normal. So it was very hard for me. And then the women I was becoming friends with were quite a bit older than me, usually a minimum of 5 years. And so I just felt very isolated. I didn't have a village, to be honest.
But I think you two having babies in COVID, talk to me about that too, because even though you were home, I'm sure you still felt isolated. And even though I was out, because Jace was born 2017. I still was isolated because I think as motherhood, we have like these blinders on and we come and go. We have to go for one thing. So looking back, I'm like, I didn't make any friends with the moms who were none of them even know about the Motherhood Village. And I'm like, how am I not? Like the whole school should know. But we put our blinders on and we get like this. So I want to hear like, how was that for you guys during COVID? Because even though you were home and it's great, but I'm sure you still felt isolated.
I feel like we kind of got the best end of it because in the newborn stage, at least for me, like, I mean, maybe my second I was out within like a week, but my first, like, it took me a couple months to be like, who am I? What am I? What is this world? So it actually gave solid excuses for just being like, no visitors today. Like I'm good. With my second, things were starting to things were open by then and it was fine. And I'm lucky in the sense that I grew up here. And although I was quite young to have my first kid in today's world at the age that I did, a couple of my friends from childhood had kids around the same time, or they were getting married and kind of moving into that life stage. So I think for me, the village has always been super strong because I grew up in a village. My parents grew up with friends that they grew up with and had kids. So I just understood the concept of village really well. And I was lucky to move back here after being in Australia and having that. And I do think, I always say, my friends that had elementary school kids, middle school kids during those years, I'm like, that I think was way tougher than what I went through in my own personal experience.
I think that age group
was really tough.
Say that I had mine in high school. My oldest was graduating. My other one was a junior. But I have to tell you, for our family, it was the most special time. And I'll tell you, because we were getting so close to our oldest going off to college first, she's a year behind that, to get the opportunity to have that kind of quality time alone. No one's coming over. We were playing cards, we're playing games, we're hanging. Like for us, it was actually the timing of that. And I know how painful this was for so many. So I never want to I don't want to be dismissive of that. But for our nuclear family, my husband was working in the car business. So we never saw him. So all of a sudden we had the four of us had this really special time to be together. And it becomes more special as they get older, because once they go off to college, it's, I'm lucky that my kids want to hang out with us, but it was actually, they were at the tail end of it, which is why I think they were probably least impacted. But the early high school, middle school kids, forget it.
Yes, that is true, for sure.
I kind of felt the same way. I mean, I'm an introvert, so to be alone for months on end, I was without society expecting me to do things, I'm like, this is amazing. But on the flip side, it was hard because I hadn't met you ladies yet. I hadn't met all the moms and dads at school where our kids go. And so I had really no friends who had kids at all. And then I was just hanging out with all these like older men working all day, or like a couple associates that I would talk to. So I had no one to talk to about what I was going through, what my body was going through when I came back, when I, had birth, all the hormones. I had no one to relate to. And my mom's like, oh, it was so long ago. I don't really remember, and like she would try, or my mother-in-law would try. Yeah.
Well, they
So
say
it
that
was
about the birth and
isolating.
delivery, right? Because it's the only reason you go back and have another one, because it's not because you're
Yeah.
haunted by the experience.
Yeah. And I had a very traumatic like birth experience where I had this like beautiful birth plan. This was a big lesson for me, and my doctor thought I was crazy. I had this like 5-page birth plan where I was going to have like hypnobirthing and candles and music and all these, and it went completely in an opposite direction with an emergency C-section. And that was a really big lesson for me. Like, I can't control everything.
Well, especially as a mom.
As a mom, yeah, and that was tough. That was really hard, and to have no one. I would tell my friends, and they're just like, "Oh wow, that's gross." Like, no, it's not their fault. It wasn't their fault. But I was like, does anyone understand?
No, all my girlfriends, they had their kids like late 20s, early 30s. I was like the older one, mid 30s. So they were like, I apologized to all of them. I'm like, one of my friends, like her daughter was in the NICU. I mean, she lived in Tallahassee and she survived. I mean, the daughter is good, knock on wood. And I was like, was I there for her? I was
You
like,
don't
oh
know
my God.
until you're in it. There's
And
no
I'm like,
way.
what did I do? And I remember telling her, and I was like in tears, and I'm like, I am so sorry. She's like, no, it's fine. I'm like, no, like you had to go through that by yourself. I could not even imagine. So it's not until you have kids that you're like, oh, I get it.
I kind of want to go back to something that you mentioned, Romi, how you looked up to your mom, how she was able to just what it seemed like to you, at least, you don't know exactly what was going on.
Well, and
but
it does change as an adult. You
Yeah.
start to see it.
you get to see it. Yeah. But you were saying that you wanted to be there for your kids and be there for everything. And for me, I kind of, throughout this process of entrepreneurship and motherhood, it's actually been a point of healing for me. Is I have always, and I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs can relate to this, is I've always equated my value with my productivity or my visibility or what I'm doing, or I've got this award, or my business is doing this. And that's something that I think is a point of healing for a lot of us, especially women in business. And so for me, my second daughter, 8 weeks old, I was off on a retreat already. Like I was already boom, 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 let's get out of here. I knew how hard the first postpartum experience was. And now looking back, I was like, okay, and we're just gonna like step over this, and I've got work, and because that's work, I can go, right? And so for me, the last few years has really been almost like what you've said. You thought something was wrong with you. Like, why don't I want to work? I just want to be with my kids. And for me, it's the opposite. It's like, I only want to work. Why can't I spend time and enjoy myself with my kids? Like, even when I'm with my kids, I'm like, but the laundry, but the dishes. Like, I always feel like there's this thing that I have to do. And something that I've been working on with coaches, with therapists is, okay, we know that you're really good at this work thing, right? Like, you've got this, you can do this. How about we step into what it could feel like to be fully present with your kids? And that's been more of the challenge for me. And so I think it's interesting that there's no right or wrong. There's no way of being like, you can do both, you should do both. Or now I think there is a tide turning of people celebrating women taking pauses in their career to spend time with their kids. And I think it's something that we should look at it as more of a pause and less of a, oh, you're just stopping your career. Like, we're taking these pauses for these personal development shifts. Really, for me, I've grown so much in the last 2 years by taking a step back from my business. And ironically, it's like the business is exploding right now without me having to be in it all day, every day. And so this shift of wanting to spend more time with my kids, but not quite knowing in my like nervous system how to just be present with my kids without feeling like shit's going to hit the fan in some way has been really empowering for me.
I'll say this as like just because of where the stage that I'm at. And Nicole and I talk about this a lot, right? Because she has an 8-year-old. Mm-hmm. My baby turns 21 this weekend. And I say this over and over again because I know this to be true. Like I said, my mom worked full time, but when she was with us, she was with us. And so I say this to Nick all the time. I'm like, it's not about the hours that they're spending. It's how are you spending that time? Because, she wrestled with, should I put Sebastian in aftercare? I feel so bad, all these things. I said to her, but you leave him in aftercare, which by the way is not prison. It's like he's with his friends and whatever. It's great. I said, but by you getting that extra hour or two to get the work done means when he walks in that door, you're giving him what he deserves and what you both need. Versus, how is it better for him to walk in the door and you're on your phone and you're distracted and you can't give him the presence? Because what he'll remember is the quality time that you spend. And that's what my memories were. We had nannies. I couldn't even tell you their names. That was sort of, there were a couple that were more meaningful, but my mom, the way she managed it, it was about the quality of time. And she had a real partner in my dad. You know, they were business partners and they were life partners. So someone was there to pick up, or someone was there at the volleyball tournament or dance. It's the quality of the time. And the only other thing I'll add to that is that this part of your life and being with your kids, it's every part of it is like, you can't get it back. You can get more clients 10 years from now. You can build your business in 15. You can do all of those things at any point in life. You can't go back and re-raise your kids. And I think the other important thing to recognize, and clearly I'm passionate about this because if I die tomorrow, the thing I'm most proud of is the humans that I've raised, is that there is no more important job than raising your kids. We're responsible for how they go out in the world, for how they impact other people, for how, like, there's no job that matches that. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care what you're doing for a living. Like, if you're producing crappy people, we got a whole other problem, honestly.
It's funny that you both said that. And actually, my question to Romi with your mom is, have you spoken to her about her mental health and did it affect her? But that's a pause, because I was going to say research has shown that parents on their phones and their kids saying, see me, or whatever the question is, and the parents not being attuned to them is more detrimental than anything else. It just sets it so much of, if we're, 1 second, and the kid is like, all right, like, you've just depleted them. Or when they walk into a room and
you don't even look up.
And you don't look up. I think Maya Angelou had said that she shifted, because she was like, anytime a child, she shifted her thoughts with it and said, and now told people, because obviously, she's no longer here. But and anyway, the poet, she had said, when a child walks into a room, smile. No matter the child, like, just smile when you see their presence, because it just uplifts them. But if you're on your phone and a child walks in and you're like, and they're like, but you're not giving, like, that is more detrimental than anything. But to your point about we're A-type personalities, and same. I remember when the employer that I had, that I was VP of finance, when we parted ways, and I was out of a job for the first time in I don't know how long, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was full postpartum. Jace was 6-7 months. We had just moved in a new house. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I was looking for work, but we had a nanny, and we couldn't let her go because I knew I was going to go back to work. And I remember I couldn't just like relax. And Jaren's like, what are you doing? We have the nanny. I'm like, no. He's like, go rest by the pool, do something. And I'm like, no. I'm like, what if she's thinking like, oh, here's this mom and she has a nanny and she's not. He's like, but you're going back to work. We're not letting her go because we need to pay her. Like, he's like, anyway, I ended up getting a job like maybe 3 weeks later. And I remember regretting that I did not just like relax, read a book, let it go. She had my child. Like, it was a perfect setup. And he was like, enjoy this time. And I was like, no, I need to do this. I need to look productive. I should be doing this. I should. And I'm working on it as well.
But how much of that too was you were literally coming from a job and you were postpartum?
100%.
Like, your nervous system probably didn't even have a chance to get into that relaxation mode. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Like, that's hard.
And get a job. Do I want to get a job? What kind of job do I want? For sure. And there's so much, oh God, we could talk about nervous system and so many things that equates to, and even with our children. But I do agree. I think raising our children is the most important job. And I think when you have a company that you're also passionate about, whether mission focused or something that you want to make a difference in, and we're all business owners here, so we all have a mission to do X, Y, Z. But then we also want to raise, good humans. I know that's the struggle, but I think you hit it on the head. And all the experts I've talked to, Jace is only 6, so I've only been parenting for 6 years. But all of the experts, the psychologists, the ones with older kids, it all goes back to the same thing of quality over quantity. Make sure that they know that that they have been felt, they have been seen, they have been heard. And I think that trumps everything, so that you can kind of shift and, okay, I've done my part. We're here, because I think connection more than anything is the greatest thing that we can give with our children or have with our children.
The one thing that I'm taking from all of your conversations and your insights is that, especially today, everything is so fluid. The way we work, where we work, why we work. And all of us here are mission-based business owners, right? Which makes it almost harder to put the phone away, because you're just like, everything you do is impacting someone in such a profound way. But the one thing that I'm taking from this is parenthood. We can all agree that what we're doing with our children, how we're raising them, is the most important thing, and it can look so different to every single person. So what you were just saying about your nanny, it's taken me a long time. I was the same thing. I'm like, we have a nanny who lives with us. She's been with us for 3 years, and before it was like, okay, well, if I have the nanny, I need to be working for every single second, right? Like if she's clocking off at 4:30, I should be in my room, like, or my office, working. And now that has shifted, where I'm like, hey, Erica, can you cook dinner tonight, and I'll take the girls to swimming, and then we'll go to the park after. And it's like, okay, I can delegate those tasks differently so that I can actually spend the time with my children, while the other things that are maybe not as important to me can be done by somebody else or using a service, like you said. So I think it's like getting creative with the resources and the help that you can get. And for me, it's been really recognizing, like, where is this really hard for me to like be present in, like, and why is it really hard for me to be present in, like, doing little tiny steps to kind of shift that balance a little bit more, so that it does feel like we can have it all without running ourselves into the ground for it.
We're getting close to the end. And so I'm going to put this last question out there. And I will say also, it's funny, I was out yesterday. My daughter's birthday's this weekend. She wanted something new to wear. So I took her to the mall. And as we walk in, my phone rings and it was Nicole. And my daughter looks at me. She's like, don't even think about it. And I was like, you know what? She deserves the hour. Like, there's no fire. So I'm still learning. I'm still working on it. You know, the difference is mine has a big enough mouth to call me out on it and say, like, no. And also, I'm at a point where they're paying attention in a different way, right? I'm modeling something different at this stage. So I want her to feel seen and recognized, and not taken for granted that because she's old enough to do things by herself, it doesn't mean she should. Okay, so last question for everyone is going to be, what surprised you most about motherhood, and what has it taught you about yourself? So we'll start with you.
So I talk a lot in both of my businesses about money, and I think that money highlights, it's not good or bad, it highlights what's really going on with us. I think that children are the same way. I think children are an opportunity to heal, because they're going to highlight whatever's going on in our minds and our brains and our bodies. So I think what it's really revealed to me is things that I need to work on in myself and heal, because it's not their fault, the things that I have from my past. And so I think it's a really cool opportunity, one, to say, okay, how am I going to parent differently than maybe my parents did? And how can I notice things coming up in myself when I'm getting frustrated at them, or they're not listening because they're 3 and 2 years old, or, you know, whatever it might be. That's been something that's been huge for me. Like, take a step back, talk to my therapist, and like, here's what happened this week. And this thing that my 3-year-old said triggered me, which is crazy. Why did that happen? And what am I going to do about it? And how do I want to show up as his mom in a better way the next time that happens? That's been something that's like fascinating to me. I'm fascinated by motherhood and my kids. Like, they constantly just
we're learning every day.
Learning every single day. I have no manual. I didn't even know if I wanted kids. I mean, none of us do. And I didn't know if I wanted kids for many years. I don't have a lot of friends who have kids now. I have more, thank goodness. So I didn't really have much of a game plan. Just kind of winging it, honestly.
We're all winging it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that for sure. I think it's a total reflection of things that you have to work on. Something that really surprised me in the last year, especially with my second daughter. My first daughter is a very classic, and I'm an oldest daughter, so I feel it. Yeah.
All of us?
Should we have a whole session?
That's like a whole new episode.
We need a therapist to come in and then sit down with us. So, but the thing is with that is, you know, she likes things very like in her place. She listens. She's very, I keep finding myself keep saying with my second, well, Layla would never have done that. Oh, Layla didn't do that at that age. Oh, I mean, my second, she will climb the thing and she will jump off and she experiences life to the fullest, which I love in theory. And parenting is a different story, and something that I've talked a lot with my therapist. And I think this is another plug with motherhood, like, have some sort of objective third party person that you can talk to, because it's a wild roller coaster. But something that I've been uncovering with is, why is it so triggering, the word that you used for me, to have a child who pushes the boundaries and to have someone who, doesn't listen the first time. And it's something that I think, like you said, like, challenges me. And it is something that I just think is, you use the right word, like fascinating, and instead of it trying to shift it, instead of being so frustrating, like, how can I be curious about why is this uncovering things about me? The second part that I will talk about is the shift that it has in your relationship with your partner. Oh, sorry. You can piggyback. We have just learned so much and how important it is. Like, we are the foundation of the family, and we do a really good job at taking regular breaks, regular date nights, staycations away. We try to do at least a week away, just the two of us every year. And we're lucky that we have support, in town that we can rely on. But how much it is important to either have that, whether it's a romantic partner, having somebody that you can trust as a friend, if you're a single parent, having someone there for you, I think is just like one of the most important things that I've found through motherhood, and allowing them to help.
Yeah, I would say it's both, and how challenging it was going to be, of how much work it really truly takes because of the triggers. I had heard another, I listen to so many podcasts, and obviously I talked to so many people on the podcast, but someone had said, like, when your child 2, 3, however old triggers you, don't let your 3-year-old self go down to your 3-year-old's level. Like, it's bringing out the 3-year-old child in you, your 13-year-old self, whatever that is. Like, they're trying to figure the world out as well. So that shifted everything for me. So my two things are, how hard it is, and how much personal development and personal growth you have to do for yourself in that. Because it's easy to just probably be like, listen, I'm just going to give it 50%, this is what I got. And maybe some days that is what it is, which is why you need the village, your partner, whatever that is, to help when there are days that you're feeling like, listen, I need something. But to truly to raise kids that, can go out in the world and be that, it takes so much more of ourselves, because they are modeling everything. They are really doing what we do, and not, or say is,
they do what you do, not what you say.
Correct. So because of that, to your point, the mirror and stuff, you're like, wait a minute. If I really want this person to go out, and then raising boys for me is like a gentleman and someone who is all the things I don't want him to be. How do I model that as a woman? How does my husband and I? So the second part is, the shift in relationship. My husband and I dated for 5 years before I thought we traveled. I was like, oh, we're going to knock this parenting thing off of our butt. And it was like, wait, I do not like you right now. And I know I've said this so many times, because that was the biggest shift. Because I'm like, how is that even possible, that you can go from loving someone so much and you're elated, and then you're like, wait a minute, no, I can't stand you right now. We're not here. So for our journey of this almost 7 years that Jace has been here, has really been, how do we come back together? And instead of attacking the problem as two individuals, coming together and say, okay, here is a problem. How are we going to tackle them together? When you were raised one way and have one view of how our child should be raised, and I was raised another way, and I have all this information, how do we bridge together to now raise a human being that's complete? Those have been the two most surprising and, I guess, challenging things for me. But it is fascinating. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's all the things.
Exhausting.
And exhausting. Yes.
It is. It's all the things. And I will say that for me, I think what I learned, again, a testament to my younger one, and it'll tie into a lot of what you said. Abby challenged me from day one, really. No, I shouldn't say that. She was an easy delivery. So maybe like by year 2, the personality really started to shine. What I learned through parenting her, and it helped me with Jonah as well, and something that I may not have been as aware of, was judgment. Mm-hmm. And the knowing that, your kid behaves a certain way, and you feel the other parents looking over, and you feel the all of those things. And you're sitting there thinking, I'm just doing the best I fucking can. Like, you don't know what I'm putting into this. And so I went through a lot with her. Like, parents were horrible, to be honest. I had a really tough time. What kept me on track and what I always want to share is my focus, laser focus, was I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure my kids are the best version of themselves. So I don't care what other parents have to say. I don't care none of that. And I'm going to get whatever resources I need to make sure that I can do that. So, I mean, we went through all of it. I had a behavior coach. We had therapists. We had peer social groups. I did the gamut. Why? Because I had no shame in knowing that, like, the only thing that mattered was how do I make sure they are the best version of themselves. If I have no friends, I don't give a shit. And we lost friends for a variety of reasons. So learning to be so much more forgiving and not judgmental of other parents, knowing that they were going through the same thing I was. Some of them were doing it better than others, but not judging. Because you don't know. You don't know what other people are going through. You don't know what work they are putting in. It takes time. You don't just implement a new thing with a kid and they wake up the next morning, it's all back, no, it's constantly evolving. So judgment, patience, tolerance, things that I didn't really have a lot of. I am in such a, after 22 plus years of parenting, like, a very different person and so much more compassionate, I think, towards others as well as to myself. So thank you guys, because I think that this was a really important conversation that we're having, that people need to hear all of these things and feel heard and seen. Like, it is the hardest job on earth, and I think we're all doing a pretty damn good job. So thank you guys for being here. And I hope everyone stay tuned for another episode of Her Pursuit. Thanks for listening to this episode of Her Pursuit. You can catch a new episode every other Wednesday. Please don't forget to subscribe or follow so that you don't miss out on any of the good stuff.
We love bringing you free content and value to help inspire and motivate you. So if you enjoyed this episode, throw us a thumbs up, leave us a rating, a review, and send this to a friend who you think would enjoy it. Your support is so important to us, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thanks for listening. Talk to you in 2 weeks.